It started on a Tuesday, a dry, unassuming morning at Miramar Air Base. The tarmac shimmered under the California sun, and the hangars echoed with the usual buzz. Young techs moving fast, barked orders, the occasional roar of a jet engine spinning up. But none of that felt out of the ordinary. Until that jet came in. She wasn't a new bird, older model, still sleek, still proud, but temperamental. She'd been grounded twice that week for electronic faults and yaw instability. Nobody knew what was wrong, not really, and nobody wanted to admit they didn't. They called in everyone, senior techs, pilots, even the Navy's own systems analysts. Still, nothing fixed her. That's when he showed up, not in uniform, not with a badge. No clipboard, no rank, just an old man in a faded brown bomber jacket, aviator glasses hanging from his collar. Walked with a slight limp, carried a leather satchel like it was from another century. A few young engineers stifled laughter when they saw him. Some whispered, some didn't bother hiding the smirks. One of them muttered, "What's he gonna do? Pray over the engine?" Another joked, "Is that Maverick's grandpa?" But Maverick, he was watching, quiet. Leaned against a railing outside the hangar, arms folded, expression unreadable. He knew something the others didn't. The old man didn't flinch. He just looked at the aircraft like it was an old friend with a limp. Then he asked a question, simple, precise. "Who's touched the ECM routing since the frame mod?" Nobody answered. Not immediately, because they didn't know, or didn't care. They had charts, algorithms, diagnoses. None of them asked the question he did. Then he did something no one expected. He ran his hand along the fuselage, fingers grazing the seams, murmuring softly under his breath. Not like a ritual, more like recognition. Like he remembered her. Not this specific bird, but every curve of that design. The soul of it. They laughed louder. One technician recorded him on his phone, but Maverick didn't laugh. He remembered that touch, the reverence. He'd seen it once, decades ago, when the first generation of Top Gun birds rolled out of production. Only one man ever touched a jet like that. He just didn't think he'd see him again. The technician with the phone kept recording. It was funny, they thought, this relic of a man, caressing metal like it was skin. But the old engineer didn't react. He just crouched under the wing and tapped twice, soft, deliberate knocks, before standing again with a slight wince in his knee. "Open the rear access panel," he said. A few of the younger crew looked at each other. One finally scoffed, "We already checked it twice, nothing there." But Maverick was still watching. He stepped forward. Just a little. "Open it," he said, not loud, but firm. And so they did. What they found inside wasn't dramatic. No dangling wires, no sparks. Just a slight warping of a bracket. A mounting screw misaligned by maybe 2 millimeters. Enough to vibrate at high G turns. Enough to cause subtle data feedback delays. Enough to feel off. The old man looked up at them then and simply said, "Replace that bracket, recalibrate the pressure sensor, and if you don't reroute the harness from the avionics bay, your yaw ghost will return." He walked away before anyone could answer. There was a silence. Not because they believed him, no. It was the confidence, the kind that didn't ask for. Agreement, the kind that had seen this before, and that kind of confidence was unsettling. Maverick watched the man disappear toward the edge of the hangar, hands in his pockets, like he had nothing else to prove. And part of him knew this wasn't over. The next morning they flew the bird. It climbed smooth, took turns clean. The pilot, call sign Stitch, reported normal telemetry at Mach 1.2. Everything held until it didn't. At 30,000 feet just above the bay, the controls stiffened. Stitch called it in. Rudder delay, pitch correction failing, backup system. Triggered, but it was late. The bird dipped, dangerously. Everyone on the ground froze, except one. The old engineer was back, No one had called him. He was just there, standing near the radar station with a steaming cup of coffee, like he knew something would happen. He looked at the screen, then at the main tech. Tell him to switch to manual triple pulse override, now. The technician blinked. That protocol's outdated. We don't use now. The voice wasn't loud, but it was final. The command was relayed. Stitch obeyed. 3 seconds passed, and the jet leveled. It was over. In the control room, nobody moved. They stared at the monitor in disbelief, and Maverick, who had been silent this whole time, finally turned to face the old man. His eyes narrowed. Who the hell are you? And for the first time, the old man smiled. The hangar was quieter that afternoon, not out of respect, but confusion. The kind that sticks in the corners of a room like dust you can't sweep. They had seen something, felt something, and yet no one could quite explain it. The old engineer sat outside on a folding metal chair, with a thermos on his knee and a screwdriver spinning between his fingers like a habit he couldn't shake. Maverick approached slowly, his boots echoing. On the concrete. You never answered my question, he said. The old man didn't look up, just smirked a little. You didn't really ask. Maverick pulled a second chair from the wall and sat beside him. For a moment, they said nothing. Just two men, once young, now surrounded by ghosts made of jet fuel and memory. I know that override, Maverick finally said. We used it on the older models, pre-Gen 2. The old man gave a nod, almost imperceptible. You designed it? There was a pause. Then the voice, rough but steady, answered. I led the prototype team for the original Top Gun F-Series, before your time, before most things. Maverick looked at him, now really seeing him. Not just an old man, a blueprint brought to life, a whisper of the machines they flew, still beating somewhere under skin and bone. The old man continued, more to himself than to anyone else. They used to call me Ghostwright. I wasn't the face on the stage. I wasn't in the press photos. But every flight system you trust with your life, I buried pieces of myself in them. He tapped his chest. They breathed because I did. Inside the hangar, someone finally pulled up the archival files. It took hours, but when the full clearance went through, they saw it. There he was, younger, thinner, hair jet black, holding a helmet under one arm beside the first Top Gun test craft. The caption read, Daniel H. Graves, Lead Systems Architect, Experimental Division, Classified. It hit them all at once, the reason the override worked, the reason he walked the hangar like a man returning home. He built it. He was the father they never knew their birds had. From that moment, the laughter stopped. The jokes faded, and the silence that followed. It wasn't awkward. It was reverent. Maverick stood as the sun dipped low behind the mountains, painting the sky in soft amber. He looked down at the old man and asked the question that would change everything. You ever think about coming back? The old man raised an eyebrow. To what? To where you belong, Maverick said. We've got cadets who think the sky is just coordinates. Maybe you can teach them it's more than that. Daniel Graves didn't answer right away, but in the way he stared out at the landing strip, fingers still spinning that screwdriver, something in him shifted, something like gravity realigning. The next morning, the hangar felt different. Not louder, not busier, just more awake. Daniel Graves walked through the bay with a quiet authority, the same oil-stained clipboard in hand, same calm gaze that had seen more sky than most satellites. But now, when he spoke, people listened. Even the cocky pilots with mirrored shades and thousand-yard stares gave him room, not because someone told them to, because deep down, they knew. This man didn't just understand the aircraft. He felt them. Like an artist feels paint. Like a musician hears the note before the instrument is even tuned. That afternoon, a training sortie nearly went south. A junior pilot, fresh out of academy, pushed the new Ghostbird into a low bank left, but the diagnostics weren't responding. Right. The onboard AI hesitated. The jet stalled at a brutal pitch. From the control tower, panic rose, but Daniel didn't panic. He leaned over the console and murmured something. Just one word. Slide lock. The technician hesitated. That's not in the current ops. Graves just stared at the screen. Trust it. A second later, the maneuver executed. Perfectly. The jet stabilized mid-spin and came back level like it had never faltered. In the A, pilot's headset, only static. But in the tower, a dozen people exhaled in stunned silence. One of them whispered, "What the hell is slide lock?" Another replied, almost afraid of the answer, "It's from a prototype series, stuff we never finished integrating." But someone else corrected him. No, it was integrated, just buried. By the time the pilot landed, word had already spread. Graves didn't just design the systems, he left breadcrumbs, tiny engineering signatures. Emergency failsafes no algorithm could predict. Like hidden wings under the wings, there for those who knew where to look and who still believed the machine could be saved from the edge. That evening, in the debrief room, Maverick addressed the squadron. He didn't use slides, didn't stand at the podium. He just leaned against the wall and spoke in that gravel-worn voice of his. There's a lot of talk about instincts, about guts. But what you saw today, that wasn't luck. That was legacy. He pointed to Graves, seated quietly in the corner. You're flying his heartbeat. The room went silent. Even the veteran instructors lowered their eyes, humbled. Later, that night, Maverick found Graves in the back workshop, tinkering with an old telemetry unit. Dust on the shelves. Blueprints rolled into cracked leather tubes. Maverick asked, "You ever get tired of being right?" Graves chuckled. "Only when it proves how wrong we were to stop building things with soul." Then, softly, "You remember, when cockpits had more than screens?" Maverick nodded. "I remember when you could feel the jet turning with you, like it was alive." Daniel smiled faintly, because it was. 2 days later, the airbase held a small private ceremony. No cameras, no speeches, just the squadron Maverick and a single, weathered man in a jacket that hadn't changed since the first Gulf War. Daniel Graves stood still as a statue, the insignia of a long-retired rank barely visible on his shoulder. Maverick had insisted. Not for show, he told the others. For respect. Someone placed a Ghostbird patch in Daniel's hand. Custom. Silver thread, black trim. Below the logo, 3 simple words, designed to endure. Daniel didn't say much. He didn't need to. But in the weeks that followed, something shifted at the hangar. Pilots began carrying paper notebooks again. Engineers stopped rolling their eyes at analog readings. Someone even found Daniel's old blueprints archived in a forgotten subdirectory of the base's server, pages filled with handwritten annotations, some of which described fixes to problems they hadn't even encountered. Yet as for Daniel, he showed up every morning, coffee in hand. Same quiet pace, same oil under his fingernails. Only now, the young ones followed him, like shadows orbiting a dying sun that refused to go dark. But Maverick had something else in mind. One evening, while the hangar emptied out under a copper sky, he approached Graves with something unusual in hand. A manila folder. Inside, classified flight records, photographs of desert testing ranges, and a proposal bearing the Department of Defense seal. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Top secret again? Maverick gave that half smirk of his. Let's just say, there's a bird that hasn't been built yet, not entirely, but it needs a soul. And I think I know the guy. Daniel looked at the specs. His eyes narrowed, scanning the data. Then, he whispered, "This isn't a jet." "No," Maverick replied. "It's the future. But only if it remembers where it came from." And just like that, the old man smiled. Not a big smile, just enough to know that the fire hadn't gone out. Not yet. And so the story ends where it began, with laughter in the hangar. Only this time, it wasn't mockery. It was respect, the kind earned over decades, the kind that doesn't shout. It just lands, soft as a whisper, heavy as a legacy. Maverick, watching from a distance, said nothing more. But in his heart, he knew. Sometimes, the loudest roar comes from the quietest man. What did you think of this story? Have you ever been underestimated just because of your age or experience? Share your story in the comments below. If this story touched something in you, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes that legacy still matters. From wherever you are watching, keep your eyes on the sky. Some legends never retire. They just fly lower and quieter. Until next time, this is Danger Zone, over and out.